The thick metal fire door squealed with protest as it lifted back up into the ceiling. It had only raised a couple of feet when the doctor rolled underneath it, leapt nimbly up on his feet, and threw his arm around Martha Jones. "Brilliant," he said, as he hugged her. "Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant." "Hey," she said to him, hugging him back, but in a strictly friendly way. "You took your time." He withdrew from her, his hand still on her arms, like he couldn't quite let her go. His eyes sparkled with delight at her and again made her insides turn over. "Well," he said, making light of it all, "it took me a minute to convince the doors that there wasn't any fire and they could let me through." "So why did they come down in the first place then?" she asked, as though the thought struck her. "What have you been up to?" "It wasn't me," said the doctor, as if shocked by the very idea. "The Badgers didn't want anyone else just walking out of the engine rooms, so they set off the emergency things." "But there isn't any fire," said Martha. "No," said the doctor, "but emergency things aren't meant to ask questions. You want them to react at the first sign of danger and not to think about it. So it's easy to set them off. Getting them to relax afterwards takes a bit of doing." "It is a pretentious precautionary measure, Mr. Doctor," said the polite robotic voice from behind Martha. "Gabriel," beamed the doctor at the robot, "you're in better shape than last time. And you got trapped down here as well?" "Begging your pardon, Mr. Doctor," said Gabriel. "I thought it was best to remain with Miss Martha, in the case I could be of assistance." "That's very noble of you," said the doctor. "I'm sure Miss Martha appreciates it." "Yeah, right," said Martha. "Kept on offering to fetch me drinks, but could he raise the fire doors?" "This unit," said Gabriel, "may only countermand the door protocols when not to do so would threaten passenger safety." "He's been saying that the whole time too," said Martha. "But was only doing his job," said the doctor kindly. "But I've been stuck in here for hours," said Martha. "Total duration 49 minutes and 18 seconds, Gabriel corrected. "That's about as long as it's been since I got out of the engine rooms," said the doctor. "Give or take a bit. Guess if you'd been brought back any earlier, I could have seen it happen, and that's not how it works. The Starship Brilliant is programmed with discretion parameters, Mr. Doctor," said Gabriel. "We apologize for any delay." "It felt like hours," snapped Martha at the robot. "This unit," repeated Gabriel, "may only countermand the door protocols when—" "What's wrong?" said the doctor, picking up on Martha's anxiety. "Martha, what's happened to you?" "Doctor," she said gently, "I died. I really died." "Yeah," said the doctor, "you did." He grinned at her, an infuriating grin which made you grin back at him. "But you got better." Martha would have said something, but her mouth fell open in horror as she saw who now stood behind the doctor, Miss Wingsworth and Archibald. "What is that? What is it?" said the doctor. "He," said Martha, struggling to find her words, "he killed me. And I think he took the TARDIS key." "Yeah," said Archibald. "See?" said Martha. "Yeah," said the doctor. "And then he surrendered it to me, just because I think I asked him nicely. And here you go." He dropped the chain of the key on it into her hands. "Oh," said Martha, as she put the chain around her neck. "So we're all friends again, now are we?" Archibald fidgeted nervously. "You've got something to say to her," Miss Wingsworth prompted him. "Haven't you, dear?" "Sorry," said Archibald to Martha. "Won't do it again." "I should hope not," said Martha. She lifted up her vest top to show him the scar on her belly where the knife had gone in. "See that?" she said. "That's what you did to me. The doctor put his glasses as he bent to examine the scar. It's healing nicely, he said. Looks like you've had it for years. Archibald also examined the scar. Skin's good, he said. Martha quickly dropped the vest back down. Don't go getting any ideas, she told him. No, said Archibald guiltily. I like having ideas, said the doctor. Ideas are good. I think I'm having one now. Yes, here it comes. They waited for him to go on. Yes, here we go. Martha, you remember dying. Her shoulders shrugged at the memory. Yeah, she said quietly. And the scar is there to prove it happened, yeah? He went on. I guess so, said Martha. Well, don't you see, said the doctor. No, said Martha. She sometimes found his enthusiasm for all things a bit exhausting. It's been a long day, and you can just tell me. Right, said the doctor. Now you died, yeah? Yeah, said Martha. And then you got brought back to life down here. Like being on a board game and having to go back to the start. Yeah, said Martha. That's what I said Miss Wingsworth. Yes, as it's a good analogy, thank you, said the doctor. But whenever it was that brought you back to life, Martha, whatever made you better, it left you with a scar. Yeah, said Martha, and then her eyes opened wider with the sudden realization. But it didn't need to. Something as powerful as that. It could have made you as good as new, agreed the doctor. But it's not just me, said Martha. It brought back Miss Wingsworth, too. I don't have any scars, said Miss Wingsworth. Then she considered. But I did the first time they killed me. We killed a lot of them, explained Archibald, and they never die. It's all very convenient, isn't it, said the doctor. He looked at Martha. What else? Something in the cocktail lounge. The canopies, said Martha. Canopies are good, said Archibald. So good that you ate a whole tray of them, said Martha. And then, a moment the tray was empty, it was suddenly full again. That's good too, agreed Archibald. But not when anyone's looking, said the doctor. It only happens when no one can see how it's done. But why? Asked Martha. Oh, really, dear, said Miss Wingsworth. The mechanics of these things are so terribly vulgar. Exactly, said the doctor. But it's part of the well-managed service, isn't it, Gabriel? They all turned to the robot. He blinks. Metal had reflected their faces back at them. There's a protocol, Mr. Doctor, he said. You don't really understand it yourself, do you? Said the doctor gently. Began Gabriel. A logic is impaired. Yes, said the doctor. That's the problem, isn't it? You're struggling to make sense of it. The whole starship is. What, said Martha, the starship is thinking? Well, yeah, said the doctor, kind of. We can have the philosophy later, but basically it responds to the stimuli in the best way it can, like the rest of us, and sometimes we think about it and sometimes we respond. You mean it's like breathing? Said Martha. You can control your breathing conspicuously, but mostly you don't really think about it. That's true, said the Blurman. Too, dear, said Miss Wingsworth. Although my cousin Sandy makes great kerfluffle about how you should always control your breathing. She was into all that sort of thing. Crystals, colored smoke. I can hold my breath, said Archibald proudly, for when I go swimming. I think we've established the analogy, said the doctor impatiently. Anyways, eager to get back to the mystery. Now this ship is going around and around in circles, isn't it? So every day the same, and no one dies for good. It's a time loop, said Martha, like in a film, Groundhog Day. Uh-huh, said Archibald. Groundhogs are bad. They take our stuff. Yes, it is a bit like the film, said the doctor. It's without all the dancing and the end. And it's not a complete loop. Things don't all go back to the beginning at midnight. They jump back a bit by bit. One suggests the loop is broken somewhere, and we kind of skipped over the gap. That's bad, isn't it? Said Martha, seeing the look in his eyes. Yes, he said. A closed loop can just runs and runs forever, but with a gap in it. Every time it goes around, there's something a bit different. You have a scar, you don't have a scar. The Badgers come back with new earrings. He grinned. See, it didn't try to make another TARDIS key. Probably couldn't understand it. But anyways, all the time it's making things better again. It needs energy, a lot of energy. But how? Said Martha. What's keeping all of it together? There are protocols, Martha, said Gabriel. But he did not explain any further. Yes, there are protocols, said the doctor. The Starship Brilliant doesn't fly through what you think of as reality, Martha. Think of where we are right now as a sort of sea of dreams. When it's flying normally, it needs to get itself back out of that and into real universe. So, as well as the experimental drive itself, it must also be able to twist reality a bit. But it was all in the brochure, dear, said Miss Wingsworth. That doesn't sound good, said Martha. You're not supposed to change reality, are you? Well, usually you're all right if you only twist it a bit, said the doctor. The TARDIS has to be able to wrap things around to get it in and out of the vortex. That's your top end and your circle's clever scale. The ship like this one has just got to make sure the ship holds together and everyone comes out at the other end in the same shape as when they went into it. He shook his head. Though you should see what happens to people when they travel about a lot long-term exposure to non-reality. It can be a bit weird. But that's not what's happening here, is it? Said Martha. No, said the doctor. It's working all out to hold everything together. The Brilliant has the rough idea of how things are meant to be and tries to keep them like that. And it's not got protocols to look after the passengers and make sure they're safe. So it's restocking the nibbles and bringing you back to life. And all in the most discreet of ways so you don't quite notice. The service has been exemplary, agreed Miss Wingsworth. Thank you, Miss Wingsworth, said Gabriel. I shall pass your kind words on to the captain. The captain, said the doctor. You should have a word with him too. I regret to say the captain cannot meet with passengers at the present time, Mr. Doctor, said Gabriel. I would be happy to pass on any message to her. Gabriel, said the doctor. If I don't speak to the captain myself, the whole ship is in danger. It's only a matter of time before we exhaust the energy available and the Brilliant just explodes. And there'll be no more meticulous resurrections this time. Gabriel considered carefully. You believe the passengers are at risk, Mr. Doctor, he said. Yes, said the doctor. Very well, said Gabriel. Please accompany me. They followed the robot left again, and then right, and up a whole wide staircase into the dining room. Martha could hear the tentacled aliens yammering away with each other over the cocktail lounge, oblivious to any danger. And the thought struck her. Where are Jocelyn and Dashiell? She asked the doctor. Dash is sleeping, Archibald told her, eager to be helpful. Yeah, said the doctor. Had a nasty bang on the head, and now we're up here, aren't we? He led them off to the side of the dining room and into the area of the ship that clearly wasn't for passengers. There were no wood paneling or plush carpets on the whitewashed walls and thick metal. It felt more like the kind of sailing ship Martha had seen in films. They changed up a bit of the steep metal staircase and into the upper level of the cramped space where the ship's crew appeared to be hanging out. There were posters on the walls and the teeny sleeping spaces, young and pretty humans waving in 3D. But Martha had been to the accumulation blocks of hospitals where the doctors and nurses lived. Her first thought was how tidy those sailors must be. They didn't have books or clothes or DVDs littered all over the floor. She assumed they had to keep their quarters tidy as part of their job. Then she saw a great gash in the ship's metal wall, and it caused the sharp noise little space car in the middle of the deck. Everything that hadn't been bolted down had been sucked into space before the Brilliant could seal the hole. She felt a pang of horror at the thought of the sailors who must have died the same way. "That's you, isn't it?" she asked Archibald sourly. "Yeah," he replied. But he could not meet her eyes. For a moment she felt guilty for being so mean to him. Then she remembered what he had done to her, the icy pain of the blade as it went through her and into the other people on board. "He is trying to be a better Badger, dear," Miss Wingsworth told her. "But you have to remember how he's been brought up. I doubt he's been to public school." "Went to Elton 9, said Archibald. "Saw an asteroid." Miss Wingsworth quivered at the amazement, her long tentacles up in the mouth. "Really, dear?" she said. "Yeah," said Archibald. "Burn it down, took the gold." "Well, that's something of a relief," said Miss Wingsworth. "Is it?" asked Martha. "I don't see how." "Well, dear," laughed Miss Wingsworth, "I was worried for a moment that he had been admitted as a pupil. You know how standards are slipping." They followed the doctor and Gabriel along the passageway. The small sleeping area had got slightly bigger as they went. Martha realized they had started an area of the lowest offices and now were walking up through the ranks. Gabriel opened the heavy door into the chamber full of little rooms, and Martha could see how much better the brilliant officers had it. They had proper quarters with beds and wardrobes and desks. "Well," said Miss Wingsworth, "I never expected this." "Better than what you've got," said Martha. "No, not the abbreviation one minds," sniffed Miss Wingsworth. "It's the unfairness of it. Why should the captain have such luxuries? The captain's recreational area is prescribed by intergalactic law," said Miss Wingsworth. "Miss Wingsworth," said Gabriel. "The regulations require that she does not spend more than 30 consecutive hours on duty and for the safety of the passengers." "Oh, I'm sure she's very deserving, dear," said Miss Wingsworth. It occurred to Martha that she wouldn't normally have called a robot dear, but this was her and Doctor's influence. "I just think we should all have the same." "It's funny there is no officers about, though, isn't it?" said the doctor. "They shouldn't all be on duty at once. They fell off the ship when we came here," said Archibald, sorry. "Even so," said the doctor, "there's no one here." "I believe, Mr. Doctor," said Gabriel, "that many were called to the bridge at the first alarm." "Ah," said the doctor, "how many people are likely to be on the bridge?" Gabriel considered. "There are 6 officers on duty, Mr. Doctor, including the captain. There are then 12 reserve officers, in which 7 are also on the bridge." "And why are they there?" asked the doctor, though Martha suspected he already knew. "I regret I'm not at liberty," began Gabriel. "Oh, come on," said the doctor. "You know the safety of the passengers is at stake." Martha watched Gabriel struggling with his robot conscience. "They were there as a protective capacity, Mr. Doctor," he said. "They're there to fight anyone who gets into the bridge," said the doctor. "What do you think of that, Miss Wingsworth?" "I think it's perfectly understandable, dear," she said. "Really," said the doctor, "it doesn't seem fair to me. Why aren't they out here protecting the passengers? That's their first responsibility, isn't it?" "Oh," said Miss Wingsworth, "I suppose they did rather leave us in the lurch." "We was expecting a fight," said Archie, "but no one would fight us." Martha felt her growing hot anger. "The crew left the passengers to die," she said. In her mind, the crew were already villains anyways. They had to be the employ of the poor, mouthless men in the engine room. "It does look that way," said the doctor, "but let's not judge them until we heard what they've got to say in response. Here we are." They had reached a huge double door at the end of the passageway. Gabriel went forward and, without having to press or say anything, did whatever he had to do. They heard a heavy lock untangling from the deep within the doors. Gabriel stepped backwards and the door swung slowly open. "Oh," said the doctor, disappointed. "Well, yes, I should have thought of that." The door was blocked by a wall of what looked like scrambled eggs. Archibald reached his hairy paw and prodded at the strange material. Even when he punched it, the scrambled eggs did not yield. "What are we going to do, dear?" asked Miss Wingsworth. "Oh, don't worry," said Martha. "The doctor can get us through, can't you?" "Oh, yeah," said the doctor. "Nothing simpler. I'm just wondering if I should. It's like with the engine room, isn't it? We can get through it easy, but we can't come back out." "That's the only way," Martha told him sternly. The doctor gazed at her for a moment. "Yes," he said, taking the sonic screwdriver from his inside pocket. "Yes, I suppose it is." He clicked the screwdriver to setting 28 and aimed at the scrambled eggs. Archibald and Miss Wingsworth watched in wonder. "What is that?" said Archibald. "Well, it's sound waves, really," said the doctor, busy at work. "Vibrations you can aim, and the scrambled egg stuff resonates at a certain frequency, and that's why it seems solid. If you can change the frequency, it all loosens up, and then we can walk through. Simple, really." "Yeah," said Archibald. "Did you understand that?" asked Martha. "No," said Archibald. Martha, despite what he had done for her, laughed. Archibald grinned at her. "See, dear," said Miss Wingsworth, "he's rather a darling once he can stop being such a rascal." "Yeah," said Archibald. "If so," said Martha, keen to change the subject, turned to Gabriel. "Don't suppose you can get us a drink while we're waiting, can you?" "Certainly, Miss Martha," said Gabriel. "What would you like?" "I'll have a cup of tea, if one is being offered," said the doctor, still busy on the door. "Is tea good?" Archibald asked. "Oh," said the doctor darkly, "not for everybody. It can be quite dangerous." "I'll have a cup of tea," Archibald told Gabriel. "And me," said Martha. "Just a bit of milk. No sugar." "Certainly, Miss Martha," said Gabriel. "And Miss Wingsworth?" "Gin and tonic," said Miss Wingsworth. "Well," she added, seeing how Martha looked at her, "I am on a holiday." By the time Gabriel returned with the drinks, the doctor had nearly finished with the wall of scrambled egg. "Miss Jocelyn," Gabriel informed them, "instructs me to tell you that Mr. Dashel is awake, but continues to recuperate." "That's good," said the doctor, taking his tea from the tray Gabriel provided. Martha sipped her tea, hot, familiar flavor, making her feel so much better. Then there was something brilliant about being so far in the future and still getting a dainty cup of tea. However far into the past and future she went, she was constantly amazed at how much people were just people, with the same worries and loves and things to eat. And that made it all the worse that Archibald had never had any of that. She looked over at him when he was finding it difficult to get the cup of tea to fit around his long badger nose. "Maybe you need a straw," she said. "Yeah," said Archibald. Didn't seem to know what to make of the tea. Martha could see the wonder in his eyes, and yet another different flavor. She thought of the things he would love to try in the first time. Chips and chocolate, fruits, and Sunday roasts. In a way she was invited him. "Right," said the doctor, propping on the soft scrambled egg with his finger. "That looks good." He turned to Martha. "Ladies first again?" "No," said Martha. "We go through together this time." "Okay," said the doctor. He turned to Archibald, Miss Wingsworth, and Gabriel. "Will be just a moment," he told them, "and then it should all be put right." "You mean, dear," said Miss Wingsworth, applauded, "you're leaving us behind?" "Nah," said the doctor. "This is only going to be boring, but we need you here covering our backs." Martha knew what he was really up to, keeping them safe from whatever dangers awaited. The crew, after all, were waiting to fight anyone coming through. "Big responsibility, that," the doctor went on, "if you think you're up to it." "Of course we are," said Miss Wingsworth, so affronted that she spit some of her gin and tonic. "Yeah," agreed Archibald. "Mr. Doctor," said Gabriel, "the crew may have instructions to shoot you if you enter the bridge without authority." "Yeah," said the doctor. "Well, I'm the only one of us who hasn't been killed yet. Probably my turn. See ya." He grabbed Martha's hand and moved quickly forward. Again the scrambled eggs pressed close against her, threatening to hold her fast. But Martha held the doctor's hand tightly, and in a moment they were out on the far side. The bridge was a long, gray room with a horseshoe of computers at the center. Each computer was commanded by a different tall, athletic human, and their tight gray uniforms showed off fine sculpted muscles. "Hello," said the doctor cheerily. "I'm the doctor." Still holding Martha's hands, he stepped forward into the room and into the invisible wall of electricity. Martha did not have the time to scream as the energy tore through her. She just had time to feel the doctor's hand burn up in hers, and then they were both gone.